Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Blenheim International Horse Trials. My name is Eric Winter. I'm the course designer here. I have Francis Whittington with me, who's a rider who's riding two horses in the 3-star. You have good hopes for these horses?
I've got two that are moving up to 3-star for the first time this year, so this is going to be quite exciting for them. Having a nice fence like this just gets us into the course, and I'm looking forward to taking them around, hopefully having good experience with them, and hopefully also getting a good placing at the end of it.
Exactly, a bit of money in the pot.
Yeah, that's it.
Have you walked the course before, or is this your first time?
No, this will be our first time out on the course this year.
Okay.
We have to wait until the inspection, which is later on today, and then once the inspection has been made, or the briefing from the stewards has been made, then the course is open for us to walk.
So when we're doing this video, this will be your first view of the course.
This is,
first.
Yeah, this is going to be the first
yeah.
time that I get to see your handiwork, Eric.
Okay, good. Okay, so we start here with the Oxford Time starter, just a fairly simple fence to get them going to start with. Here we are at fence 2, the Equine and Country Olympic table. As the name suggests, this table actually came as one of the fences that was jumped at the Olympics. Francis, fairly straightforward table to get them going.
I think so. We've had a good run down from the start now to the second fence here for the CCI3 star. For me, I think the ground is running down to it, so it's just going to be a case of making sure that as the rider, when we come to this, we just keep their balance. It's going to be quite early, well it is very early on in the course still, second fence. The horses are going to be feeling fresh and are going to be wanting to take us, hopefully, to the fences a bit more. So I think it's got a nice front on it. There's ground line there, but we still just need to balance them as we land from here. But also, this is really important that when we do land, we'd make sure we still gallop away so that we're not wasting any time for later on in the course.
I mean, for me, this is a fairly simple fence for the course designer, but just something to get you going and get you started into the course, sort of thing, let the nerves relax over the first 2 or 3 fences. So.
That's it. The question, we're walking this really early on. I don't think they've finished dressing, have they? These logs here have got splits in. Is that just because they've got splits in, or are you going to put
little bits of brush in here? Yeah, in those split logs.
So they'll finish dressing that for Saturday. Yeah. So this will all be brushed up.
Yeah, a little bit more. But you wouldn't want to put too much under that, and I mean, I would have a conversation as to whether we actually need quite so much in it. To me, I think probably that one, and then we might take out these 2 in the centre, because the more gap you have underneath, the better the horses read it, I think, and sometimes it just is easier for the horses to jump it.
I think certainly when we first came up to it just now and had a look at it, it doesn't look that imposing.
No.
And did think, oh, actual fact,
the more you fill in underneath it, the more the horses just run at it and don't respect it. So I think to get them to respect it, I would almost probably, by the time we actually run here, we will take out the 2 centre sections of timber.
Yeah. And that would be good. I think that will just back the horse off a bit
and the
more,
riders will respect it
and get you thinking a bit more, just to set you up for later. Yeah.
Okay, we're here at jump 3, the Safari Champness question, which is a ditch and brush fence. This is the 3rd fence on the course. Quite a reasonable ditch, but
yeah, I think for the start of the course again, we've jumped down into it so you guys can clearly see what the ditch is going to be like. For us as riders, when we're galloping to it, it's important that we don't focus on this ditch itself. We've got a nice ground line at the front here. We've got a run in still slightly downhill to it, but I actually think despite the ditch here, this is a case of just cantering to it, set them up slightly, but jump out of our stride a bit.
The ground rises slightly, come into this. Always when you're building a ditch like this, it makes it much easier to jump. If you have those last 2 or 3 strides on slightly the up, then your horses aren't looking down into the bottom of it quite so much. The one thing about this is actually where it's placed and where you're coming from, the trees get in the way a little bit, and so I think there'll be a little bit of a thought process, I hope, about which side of the trees you're going to go and your route to it.
I was just looking at that there, whether we come this side of the trees or if we drop to that side of the trees, we come around some fences. And for me, when I'm looking at a course like this or a fence like this, it's as much about where I'm going after the fence that determines my route to the fence. So I want to know if I'm heading up that way now, I think I want to come down here. So
I think you will do, because I think you've got to land and turn up the road.
Yeah,
good. This is for A and B. This is the first combination on the course. 2 big tables. It's the protect-in tables. Francis, what do you think? I mean, to me, it's a reasonably straightforward combination, but quite stands up at you.
Yeah, I I looked at this coming up to them for the first time today. And we've got a nice run down. This is a run downhill to it. And in fact, by the time you've landed, you are going to have a little bit of a drop onto a little drop after this fence before we then travel on down to part B. Now, you know, me personally, I never walk any of my distances. It's just something I choose not to do or don't do. But when you walk this or you've set these fences out, what are you looking at distance-wise? What are you hoping
to me, I think they'll land in sort of 2 or 3 yards after this. So normally you'd say 1, 2, and you'd say that would be their landing point. But actually, when I look at where they're approaching this from, which is quite a distance away on a fairly straightforward gallop, I think they'll make another yard off of that. So I think they'll land out here, which gives it quite a decent drop on that.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
And then from here, I'd say they'd go probably, because early in the course, they'll probably go on a level 4 yards. So it's 4 of my strides for every 1 horse stride. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm thinking they're going to get sort of here. Yeah. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think you need to allow for that sort of big jump over the first. When they land, the higher the fence is, especially on the landing side, the further they travel, and certain types of fences kick them out a little bit further.
This one, when you look at this fence, it looks a lot smaller compared to the first one.
Yeah.
Is this because of the placing here, or is it? Or
We
are
measure
the
the fence. We measure the fence off of the takeoff point. So when I walk round with the TD, so this fence will be measured from back here. So as a show jump, when you measure a show jump, you measure it straight up the front of it. Whereas with a cross-country fence, you measure it from the takeoff point. So when you have that little drop on that, it means you can get, although it's only $1.20 only $1.20 it is $1.20 from takeoff point. Actually, if you measure down the front of it, it's probably much closer to $1.60 in height. It's probably closer to sort of 4'9", 5 foot in actual height down the front.
And do you have to measure the drop at the back of the fence? Is it?
We're not allowed to go over 2 meters at this level.
Okay.
Drop. So, but that wouldn't be that. That would probably be, you know, probably $1.60, $1.70 on the back side of that, I should think.
It's a nice fence again. Start putting the dimensions in, jumping a little wider, stretches the horses out before, and I take it, we start to head back down
from
there.
here it starts to get more serious, and actually you start to get
questions.
into those sort of combinations much more.
Yeah.
This is fence 5, the Fidelity Fun Finder, which is 2 big corners, fairly unrelated between the 2 fences. I mean, they're measured on a sort of 7 stride distance, horse stride, but I think some will go on 8, some will go on 6. They'll do all sorts of different things down here. Just 2 straightforward, fairly big questions. What do you think, Francis?
I like the way that you say it's 2 straightforward, fairly big questions. We got a double of corners here, and I think for everybody that's going to be stood here having a look at these fences now, they can see there is quite a question to them. I like the way that you've positioned them slightly down on the hill, but high enough that you have a choice as a rider to come around the bend to go back up the hill before turning down. Or in this case, where the ground drops away, it's going to, I think, encourage some riders to cut in a bit tight to this first corner. Over our shoulder, you can see part B, the second part of this combination. And interestingly, I think that you've made that second corner a lot tighter and a lot more narrow than this first corner. It would have been interesting to see what this would have been like if it had been much closer together as a combination. I wonder if it'll be a little forgiving now before we then gallop down through the water.
Yeah, I think it will be, but I think it's a balance, of course, always. And to me, I didn't want to load the front end too heavily. So although it's an A and B question, intrinsically to me it was 2 separate questions. Coming down to the water for the first time has a little bit of an influence. Again, we're still settling horses in fence 5. I've made that mistake before of having a very early combination that's been very strong and actually finish up with almost too many horses walking home from there. I want them to gain experience and gain confidence before they really get into the guts of the course later on. So I think this is strong enough without being absolutely in your face. The second one is slightly narrow and slightly stronger than the first one. There's a slow alternative to the second one. So if you lose your reins here or you're on a young horse, then you can go round. Time is always of the essence here. So yes, you can come around here and you can come up the top and take a nice line, and on a younger horse you can take your time to get to it and make a proper job of it. But actually, every second you waste here counts. Blenheim traditionally has 6 or 7 inside the time, which is quite a low, you know, you've got to keep shifting if you're going to get the time here. And actually, every 4 or 5 seconds you waste here and 4 or 5 seconds somewhere else that makes it a safe jump costs you at the end of the day on those time penalties.
I think that was it. I think it was last year. Was there only 3 in the time last year?
Yeah, I think there were 5 last year and 3 the year before. Yeah.
So it is going to be tight. We don't want to waste too much time.
No, so it's always that mental thing. I mean, I think this is a very different question for the person who's out on their first horse and they can take their time and get straight, and for the person that's actually clocking and trying to come round here, and you know, the time is measured quite tight here, so you haven't got room to be fiddling around too much.
Now, if we choose as a rider to take the long route, the black flag over the far side there, can we jump this fence and then turn back on ourselves this way?
No.
How do we
You can't go around a fence. So you have to jump over this fence, and then you have to go down the hill and back up the other side of that unjumpable, and then back down to the other one. It's plenty of time. Not difficult to do, but takes a long time to do it.
In other words, we don't really want to be jumping that black flag route.
And not if you're going to be in contention.
No. Tell me about this fence, Eric.
This is fence 6, the Shire's Wooded Hollow. Just a traditional old sort of coffin fence. You have to have a short canter in. I just wanted the distance is reasonably short on the bottom. I just wanted them to turn in the bottom. They'd have the control over the top of the ditch just to pop over it and come up to this rail. Shire.
I don't walk the distance. I'll walk my line to a fence. And one of the things I noticed about this fence it's not too long between the rail to the ditch there, so the horse can make a decent shape over the ditch. And then I've looked at this and I'm thinking, I think it's going to be like 4-2 to pop out over this fence coming out. Interesting, you've made a kind of like a corner effect here.
With the ditch,
This is, I think that's great. The ground line takes you off to the side there.
It just makes them, I think, ride that arc a little bit better. I hope it will make the riders ride that arc a little bit better.
Looking at this, it looked like you'll have as a rider, the horse is going to jump over it, which will make the first stride nice and round as well, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then be able to ride into this.
And not too open a distance. I think that, to me as a designer, I don't really like it when you jump those little upright sort of questions and then you land and then you have to really fire to get out, because what it does is tempts the riders to come in a little bit fast. Whereas what I've tried to do is make the whole question about roundness and control and the ability to keep the horses in that pattern all the way through it, so they're short and compact and round.
We can see here behind us that you've put this on reverse pin. Can you explain the reverse pin slightly? This is the first fence we've seen like this.
It is. This wire cable holds the rail, and then it has a frangible aluminium pin underneath it, which has a shear point on it. So when the horse loads the top of the fence, then the fence will collapse away if they get into a situation where they load it vertically and they have too much force on it, so they're likely to fall over it. Then the fence breaks away and the rail collapses out of the way of the horse and allows the horse to carry on. We have a system in the FEI now that, and within British Eventing, that if a horse is deemed by the fence judge that this collapses and it would have prevented a rotational fall, or the horse would have fallen had the fence not have collapsed, then they will get penalised for it anyway. So it's still a very fair system, but it allows, it's obviously a much safer system.
And you've got it reverse pinned on the other side there, which makes a lot of sense, that one. Do you think with this fence here, looking at it, that this is inviting more of a glance off rather than an awkward?
I do think that, but I think that also, if you put it in there and it saves one person and every 300 people that fall over these fences, so every 5 years it saves somebody, then actually that's still value for money to me.
Quite agree with that.
No argument, This is fence 7, the Club Cadet table. Fairly straightforward table, substantial piece of timber. but a let-up fence after those two more complicated combination fences.
This, like you say, nice let-up fence to have a good gallop over.
Yeah.
Open the horses back up again before we take it up to the far end of the course there. What are the dimensions of this fence? Because we call it a let-up fence, but dimension-wise, it still looks like quite a big fence.
Yeah, it's 120 high and it's got a 180 top spread on it. So that's still a big old fence to jump. But horses, when they're travelling in an open pattern, I think they definitely cope with this very easily. It's almost, I think, let-up fences are not so much in that they're smaller, it's in they're mentally less exhausting for the horses, and it allows the rider to get the horse back into a shape that they want to. So if they've had a few difficult jumps over some of the combination fences, it gives them almost a chance to have a run to a fence and come a little bit faster or a little bit slower and get their ducks in order and their control sorted before they go on to the next combination.
So just peering over and looking at the front again, and for anybody that's going to be here watching this, looking through, you'll see that there's a real nice profile at the front of the fence,
Yeah.
which is going to allow us as riders to keep travelling to the fence, as you say, and jump out. And it always surprises me when we look at fences like this, is the point that the horse takes off to the point that the horse can land.
Yeah.
People talk about width of the fence, but in actual fact the horse has got such an incredible jump that the distance they can travel in the air is vast.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they can really, I mean, over a fence like this, when they're just galloping in that straightforward sort of way, they would really travel over a big arc across the fence because they don't make too much height over it.
Yeah.
So they actually have a much longer, flatter sort of jump. So the 180 top spread is, I mean, the horses, you know, when we just walk a distance, we walk that distance, every stride of a horse is actually 12, 13 feet long.
Yeah.
So actually, you know, a 12-foot water jump and 12-foot open ditch looks like an enormous fence, but actually a horse does that every time it takes a stride, it covers 12 feet. Here we are at fence 8 and 9, the Equitrek Endeavour combination. The Easter heads there with brush behind, around here to the two brush parallels on the mound on a slight angle. Although these fences are, you know, the first fence and the two fences on the mounds are in a relationship, they're not actually related. There's not a set number of strides, I would say, that they will put between the two, but there's a relationship between how you jump that fence and how you jump this, and then from here there's a simple 4-stride straight line between the two fences. But the rise up onto this mound is not to be ignored, really.
I think back when I see this fence to last year, where I didn't have the best of jumps over this first part,
Yeah.
and this was because I felt I had taken advantage slightly of the number 8 over there. It's a very easy fence that you can keep coming to and just jump out of your distance and stay a little open, but that then has a direct result on coming up the bank and jumping through this combination. And I found that my horse, Easy Toke, had to come out and really stretch to jump over this first part.
Yeah.
Then because of the relationship and the distance between A and B came up very nicely. But this was a direct result to the way that I jumped that first fence over there, which, although not on a related distance, the canter of how you jump that fence, the canter you have there, is vitally important to your balance and setup for this combination. Have you changed that?
And undoubtedly, I think that you know, how you jump that makes a difference to how you jump this. Last year they jumped, I ran them, the string ran actually to the left-hand side of the little tree up there, and they jumped over this fence, and it guided them to jump this fence slightly right to left, which sort of pushed them out a little bit and made this turn a little bit easier. This year I've made that slightly harder. I've taken that piece of string and run them straight down to that fence, so that actually when they land over that, it's very easy for them to get on too sharp an angle to jump this fence properly.
Eric, now I've finished cutting this fence here, I'm going to finish this off. Tell us about this course.
This is the Rico's log pile, a fairly straightforward run and jump fence, let up, quite upright in the front though, so not to be disrespected. Again, that sort of 180 maximum top spread on it and 120 high. Beautifully dressed by David, the guy who actually builds the course here and does all the building. I mean, he does all this carving, which is fantastic.
How long did you have to stand for to get a true representation of you?
That's me. I was only 12 when I started that.
Looking at this, you haven't black flagged this.
No.
This is white
Either
and
or.
red, either
Yeah.
or. Did you just do this purely to create a situation whereby riders had to make a choice?
A little
Just to
bit,
make
but
you
I think the CIC horses, the young horses on the Sunday will come round and jump over that one because that's on the line to jump there.
Yeah.
And then I think the older horses in the CCI will come and jump this one because it's in the line where they're going. So, not sort of just really an aesthetic thing.
Yeah. It's a nice fence.
Yeah, it's a
nice
lovely
fence.
yeah, yeah. This is fence 11, the Oxford and Whitney wine bar. Big bar on top of the hill there with a 180 top spread, but quite a decent sort of drop on the far side of it. Land, and then you have this sort of related distance, which is very much a related distance down through here to the corner. Quite a reasonable question, I think. Control and balance of how you land over this fence. Francis?
This, I think, is going to be an interesting question this far on in the course
Yeah.
as well. And for you guys that are going to be stood here watching and having a look at this fence, the relationship between the big table to my right here and the corner over my shoulder is based around the way that we as riders approach this fence and jump the table here. The type of canter that you're looking for is a canter of the energy and still with a bit of length, but ensuring that we have the balance there, so that we use their power and their scope to jump that table to be able to maintain the balance and the control and therefore the rhythm through the turn to jump this corner. Any horse that rides in, I think that rides in strong to this fence
Yeah.
and jumps out too big, especially on ground that's falling away like this,
Yeah.
is going to risk running to the side
Yeah.
here, or having a jump where they're having to come very handy to the fence.
Yeah.
I think this is almost a time where you want to ensure that your setup is correct in your approach
Yeah.
to ensure that you have a jump that is balanced and controlled to make the turn. Would I
Yeah,
read
yeah,
that
definitely.
right?
I think one of the interesting things this year is that there's been a slight rewording of the rules regarding black flag fences, and now with the black flag fence, that's a fence with an alternative option that's not actually part of the same fence. We call those black flag fences. They have a black line through the number. They can't now go round the fence that they're later intending to jump. So what that means is that when you jump over that bar here, if you jump the straight big bar, you have to come down and jump that corner. Because if you jump over that bar and go round the back there, which you used to be able to do, if you land in a crumpled up heap here, you go round the back there, you will have gone behind the fence that you're later intended to jump and completed a circle in jumping that fence, so that will be 20 penalties.
Could you not jump that and go around the back?
No,
that
because
way?
you've completed a circle going around the fence that you've jumped already. So you can only jump this fence to that corner, or you can jump that slow alternative and go around there to that corner. There are 2 or 3 fences on this course where I've used that rule to my advantage to actually say, when you're riding this course, you have to have a feel for what you're sat on and the way you're coming to the fence. You can't land and then decide you're going to go slow. You're either committed to jump that line or you're committed to jump that line.
I think with fences like this, I think that's how it should be.
I think it is. I think that's a rider skill that we've slightly lost over the years of actually, that's the way the rule was with unjumpable fences, and the black flag rule confused it for a while, but now I think they've cleared that up, that actually we can go back to those fences and say, when you're riding, how you jump the fence before it, the 2 fences on the mound, directly influences how you might approach this fence.
Yeah.
Because
Definitely.
actually, if you've had a bad jump up there, you might think about going slow because you haven't got the option of jumping in there and taking a view as to whether you're going to do that. If you jump in there with absolutely no intention of going to that, but go around the outside of it, because you've completed a circle in doing that, you'll get the 20 penalties for doing that.
I think as a note for myself and anybody riding, those watching, that now that we've seen this combination here, I think this actually makes a difference to the way that we might jump that log pile before this as well. And in that respect, I'd say that we would use that log pile and our approach to the log pile and our type of jump over that log pile as a way to prepare us for jumping this.
Yeah.
So rather than being too gallopy and open to that log pile, I think it'd be a good idea to come in a little closer to make them come up and down over the log
get a good
path,
shape over that.
to get a good shape to prepare us to have another good shape over this.
Yeah, exactly.
Before making the turn.
And
to the
you're
corner.
getting very much into the guts of the course here. When you start over this combination, within the next 2 minutes of here, there's a lot of jumping to be done, because you come from here to the water, to out of the water, to another combination, then another combination. So this is very intense, this little bit. I think that they'll be up on the clock coming out of the Coffin or in this sort of area. I think by the time they come out of this little section, they'll be well down, and they'll have to bring that back up again, and they've got some galloping later on in the course to do to catch up on that time.
This is going to be a fun fence to watch.
Yep. We're now at fence 12, which is the Karcher cottages into the water. 2 shouldered fences into the water on a 2-stride distance between the two. This fence goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the measuring point of the fence. So because this is on the downslope into the water here, actually we measure it from here, the takeoff point. But if they get down into here, this is a big old fence from here. But they won't get there. They have a little ground line and a bit of ground here that they can jump from. This is 140 high, the top of this brush into the water. It's probably got a 180 drop on the far side of it. Just a fairly narrow space to get through as well. Francis?
I think looking at this, the question, we've got the horse balance coming down the hill, making the turn to the fence. There's a lot to back the horse up at the first part of this combination. And I would say that we need to balance them having come down off the hill, off the turn, and then ride forward to it to ensure that they still make the distance, but are punchy enough jumping into the water. So we jump out into the water and not sort of up and down into the water. Then, as far as travelling across water, for us it's always very important that we keep the horse galloping or cantering in a very big, round, positive canter. It's quite easy to lose your canter through the water, but the way that the depth of the water is here, we want to make sure we keep travelling through the water so that we don't waste time, but we create energy for coming out of the lake the other side.
The lake on the other side of it is quite a forward distance from the brush to the next fence, so you do need to keep travelling across it. And also this, to me, we were talking earlier about the influence of the time. Horses, they average 570 metres a minute on a cross-country course. Well, this is 70, 80 yards across this water that allows me just to have a little bit of a block on them. A lot of horses will travel across here. You have to be going quite quickly to be travelling at 400 metres a minute across here. So it's much harder for the horses to stay on time through this section. And as I said earlier, you know, we've come from that corner, then we've run down this very steep bank to jump over these fences, up another steep bank later. So time will be ticking away as you're coming through here. This is fence 13, the Fidelity Asset Management dragons coming out of the water. Simple brush fence, step up out of the water to this dragon on an angle to the step there. Quite a committed one stride, I think, but easy for the horses to read.
Yeah, I think, again, we talked about it at the previous fence about travelling across the water and how the water has an effect on the horses when we're galloping through it. What is very important when we come to this fence is the way that we approach and the type of canter that we have before we jump up the step. And for me, looking at this, I think it's important we get this step up clean so that we get a decent distance away from the step so we can make the stride, as you say, it's a committed one stride before jumping over the dragon.
I wanted them to come up there, come out of the water with a little bit of pace, so they shorten this distance between the two. If they come out of the water dwelling a little bit and not really positive enough, then they'll be away from this dragon, and then that makes it much harder for them to actually get that line.
And I've noticed on the step out you put the brush on, and is that to create the horse to jump up and out?
To me, they read it much better, and it's much easier to attack a fence out of water than it is a step out of water.
Yeah, definitely is. And then notice on here on the dragon, you've got the brush on the top here. And this is very interesting. The brush that you've got here is very different from the birch that we have. All of this is plastic brush on here.
Yeah, this is plastic, so you could just reuse it. It just is stitched into, put into little holes there. But the great thing about this brush is that it has that variegated sort of look to it. So to me, it's important that brush looks like brush, that the horses can actually read it and know that it's a different sort of thing, and it's soft and they can run through it and they can brush through it. And this does that every day of the week because it has different colours within the actual brush structure.
Yeah.
So it's a very good new thing.
I think this looks good, but also feels very good.
Yeah.
Often when you have birchen fences like this where it's quite short, it gets put in and then it gets cut down.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we find the birch is quite stalky.
Yeah, there's no way you could injure your horse on this. It's very soft.
At all.
Yeah.
And if one bit gets worn down, you can just swap it with something on the edge.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You know, it's great stuff. Okay, let's get on our dragons and ride away.
Okay.
Are you on that one?
I'm on this one.
Okay.
I'm on this one.
Okay, this is fence 14, the Dobson and Horrell grain store rails. Big open set of rails at the top of this hill. You've come up that very steep hill from the water to jump it. What do you think, Francis? I mean,
I think here you need to give it that bit of respect. As you say, they've come up the hill here. It's quite a steep but very sharp hill. It doesn't go on for too long. You must give them a breather on the turn and then ride down to this. It's big, it's got a wide ditch on the front of it. Clearly you want to be over to that side a little bit more. But actual fact, other than that, I think this is one of those fences that looks a lot worse than it actually is.
To me it's a rider frightener fence.
Yeah.
It's actually, you know, when you come to the fence, if you come to here to jump the fence, it's not much more than a novice fence. It's not enormous. And it should jump well, I think. It's really just a let-up fence, but it is a rider fence for your novice, your rider that actually looks at this. It looks like a big, expansive sort of fence. The lightness of the rail on the back of it makes a lot of difference. There's a lot of air underneath it, and also this is again reverse pinned.
I think we talk about measuring of the distance of the height of the fences again, and here I am clearly standing down in the ditch, which makes the fence look a lot higher. Yeah. But where Eric was from the point
this
of
is takeoff point. Yeah, it's 1.5 meters, I think, high. You know, and a 120, 130, 40 base spread on it, so it's not enormous when you actually get there. But it would be a big old fence if you jumped it out here.
It would be a very big fence if you jumped it out here. We're definitely, when we come from here, we want to come around here and be definitely left of centre, which still keeps it nice and ascending, gives a nice easy jump there, and then we can travel on down to what looks like it's going to be a step up to a
step
log.
up to a bank straight.
So interesting. Eric's getting us to stretch out over here, and in a minute he's about to get us to compress for a bounce.
Both those last fences have been that way.
Yeah.
So into the water is a reasonably open sort of positive distance, out of the water is a very positive distance, then this again is a very positive fence, and then I want you really to shorten your horses up to get that jump up onto the step. You know, so to me it's about that relationship between the 3 or 4 fences that you've come from, because they all ask very different questions. And a very intense section. You know, when you get to that fence down there, you've had a lot of fences in this last little bit. Yeah, very quick and fast.
It's going to be tight on the time.
Very slow section of the course, really. And I think you've almost got to just jump through this, and then you've got some galloping stretches. There's a minute later on, minute and a half, with only one jumping effort in it. 2 fences. So
interestingly, with all the fences that we've had recently, you've been playing with different types of canter. I think that's something we can discuss down at the next
exactly.
fence.
Let's get down there. This is fence 15, the Kubota Klipspringer stepper log. As we said at the fence before, very much focused on the canter, a very different pattern of canter. And when you come down this steep hill to this fence, it naturally puts your horses on their head and they roll down here a little bit, sort of thundering down towards here sort of thing. You've got to make some positive riding decisions to jump this well.
Definitely, when we were up at the previous fence, we were up there and we were discussing the different types of canter that you needed. We've had in the last 4 fences, we've had 4 different types of canter that are necessary. And when we come to here, we've just opened up slightly over and stretched out over the fence before. Now we've run down the hill, we've had the road crossing, and we must never underestimate how the road crossing affects the horse's canter and the horse's rhythm, and therefore their balance. When we get to here, we need to make sure as riders that we compress the horse up, coil that spring up, ready to release the pressure and the power that we've created, so they jump up the step and then bounce from here over this log. when we set up for fences like this, it's important that we do have their focus, we have their attention. I was just discussing with Eric earlier about setting out the distances and what measurements they make and what measurement they take from the front of the lip to where they actually put the log. And that was an interesting discussion we were having, because Eric bases an awful lot of that based on feel and the situation of this type of fence.
So, yeah, I said that basically I would say that I'll walk up to it and I think they're going to land there, so I put my thing there and then I build the fence to the correct position from that, depending on the height of it. So I'd actually just feel that. Last time we had this fence, we had several people that came down here that really just let their horses run down into this and jumped up here and got right up to here, and then had a very awkward fence over this. This again is reverse pin to allow those horses, if they do that, to release, you know, to help them. But you have to take authority. To me, cross-country riding is about riding across country, and cross-country is not always flat, and it's not always 520 meters a minute or 570 meters a minute. It's about slowing down to ride some bits of ground and speeding up to ride other bits of ground and distances and things. And it's about the feel for that. And this very much is a shortened, bouncy, springy canter, so that you get into here and spring up on top of here. Okay. This is fence 16A, the equestrian clearance hay cart or brush cart. New fence. At the top of what we've just come up, a fairly steep little incline. Again, change of canter. This is a very wide fence. It's maximum width, brush at the top, so they're 140 high. Very much a big, open, scopy sort of question to get them in front of the leg and really move up to jump it. You want to hope your horses are fit enough here, because if you're coming up there a little bit tired, there is a slow route that goes around the back, but will take time, and you want to hope your horses, you need a bit of punch here.
Yeah, I was looking at this, we have had that canter up through the woods now.
Yeah.
One thing I always find about going through the woods is you often think you're going a lot quicker than you actually are. And so we as riders need to make sure we keep travelling up the wood and keep our leg on to keep that pace up. Once we come along the gallop along here, we still got to create that engagement again and create that energy to the canter, so that when we make the turn, we can commit on what is going to be a decent 2 strides through this double of wagons. I think it looks like it's an imposing fence, but I think this is one of those fences where it's going to create a very nice image for you guys watching, and hopefully a nice feeling for us riding.
The only thing I think you've got to take in mind is that this is the 5th combination and the 11th jumping effort within the last minute and a half. So actually that area from the time you jump the bar corner at the top through to this is very intense. Lots of jumping effort. Could just take you a little bit of time to get through here. After here you've got quite a long open gallop around the back there to catch up a little bit, but your horses might be almost a little bit, whoa, you know, what's coming next.
So here we could end up with a situation where you might get a silly something happen, which would be as a result of an accumulation of
of things around the other and the changes of the canter through that bit. But I think this, as you do, you know, is just 2 big square parallels. Actually, you need to keep your brain engaged and not be a complete muppet, but actually should jump fairly easily.
And then after this, there is a decent bit of gallop
stretch down through, and just
till the next fence.
This is the Express Cafe's train. Very simple run and jump fence. You come down that track behind us that we've cut into the hill here, just to get the horses a little bit of better footing there. To come and jump over this, it's a fairly simple fence.
I agree. I think this is, from the rider's point of view, this is a fence that's been put down here to give a reason to come down the bottom end of the track
to make
here.
the distance.
But then that said, we've had so many fences now where we've had lots of tricky combinations that it's nice to have a fence and a bit of a run down the hill. The good thing is the gallop has been downhill and just allows them to get the wind back slightly. A fairly straightforward fence here. That said, we still need to respect it. It's still got a big front on it here, and we need to make sure that when we come up the lip, there's a little lip about 3 strides back there, that we want to come up, keep their balance, come to this, jump out of their stride so we don't waste too much time, and then we continue the canter on. So although this is straightforward, it's still one to respect, so that the horse doesn't come and rub it with the leg when they're tired.
Yeah. There's a good minute here without a fence on it, with just this one fence on it, just to let them get settled back down in after that very intense sort of area. The one thing we've done with this year, which is new, is it was a very upright train, and we've actually just taken the edge off it, put this little rounded bit on the front so that this is on like a 45-degree angle to the front, so if the horses do hit it, it just bounces their leg off a little bit more and makes it easier for them. They don't directly hit that piece of timber, which is a bit better. Okay. This is fence 18, the British Eventing Squirrel Hole. Big fence, as Francis just said when he walked up to it to start with. This is a really big fence. It's under this twisted bough here. To me, it's a little bit of a let-up fence, although it's a big fence. You know, again, we've gone back to this sort of minute and a half with only the 2 fences in it, so it allows them a little bit of time to get back up to speed again. But the last minute has been fairly well uphill, hasn't it?
Yeah, my first view of this when we got up to it was that it was a very big fence, and I think that when you take into consideration we're 2/3 of the way round now.
Yeah.
2/3 of the way round, the last minute at least has pretty much been uphill, almost from the water.
Yeah.
We've come up and then down a bit and then up and up and up again.
Yeah.
I believe there are going to be some horses that are going to be slightly leg tired when they get to this stage. So it's going to be important for the rider to ensure that they take control, create the energy together, create the focus, the concentration, so that they can ride up to this and jump through this, what is very big fence.
And then we go from here to the arena. So we come into the arena here. This is always a busy area for the horses, and at this level it's probably the first time they've run into a big main arena like this. So as they come through the gate, the horses will tend to bring their head up, put their ears a little bit, come a little bit off attention. So I've given them plenty of room in here to get to attention before they come to our title sponsors fence, the Fidelity Outperformance basket behind us. They come and jump over there. That's really a setup fence for them, and then they come round the corner here and down to these 3 fences in a straight line. Now there's the first fence here, this little round bucket, to the basket in the middle, to another one of these round buckets. There are lots of different ways you can jump this. There's a straight line up the centre, there's a slightly curving line on 3 strides, and then a slightly curving line, so you'd go slightly curving line here to the right and then slightly curving line to the left, but that obviously makes that distance slightly longer between those fences, so it's slightly more, you know, you'd have to be a little bit bolder to do that, but it puts you slightly squarer to the centre one. Or there's a way you can jump over this and go around the outside of that flower basket on the 4 strides, but then that definitely puts you outside of the flower basket. Again, you can finish up coming back over the last one. So lots of different ways to jump this, lots of different ways to tackle the question. I think the bulk of them will come straight up the centre, but it'll be interesting to see on Saturday morning.
This is one of those fences which does create a lot of question from the rider's point of view. I think that if I were to set a combination like this out in the arena at home, you'd find that the whole question would become far more simplified. And I think it's very important when we then as riders come and walk the course, and for me personally, when I come and walk the course, I will look at this as if this is just a set of show jumps going down the line here. And I will ride it as if it's a training exercise, a bit of fun for us at home.
Yeah.
And that way you take away that mental pressure from trying to get a question that is perceived to be quite complicated.
Yeah.
You are able to simplify it in your brain. And so for everybody watching here, when a rider comes to ride through this, I think you'll see the majority perhaps head straight.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of room in between the combinations to make it forgiving.
Yeah.
And therefore I wouldn't see, I think at this stage, when the horses are getting more tired, trying to turn them and twist them and bend them through different lines makes it a lot harder for them. The best route here for rider and most certainly for the horse is to go straight.
Yeah, I think providing you've got enough scope to make the distance in the centre, then I think straight line is always best. It's easier for the horses to understand, and let's face it, you know, none of us are fantastic, and actually we look for our horses to help us out. They're the ones that have got to decide how to jump the fence and to make the height of the fence and things, and so actually the more simple you can make it for them, the better. And I would agree with you that it's a straight line exercise.
I think I think it's important here to make sure that you go out wide enough so you can have a good
Yes,
line
exactly, a
with
good
good
shot
impulsion
in.
down
Yeah.
to the fence.
Yeah.
And if you get this right, I believe it will take you through.
I think some of the fences, that some of the people that might be affected by this are the ones that have got that little minute marker bleeper going there, and they're down on the clock.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make up those few seconds, and that's when this starts to become more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is fence 21, the Ariat Dew Pond. There are several different options here. First way, you can jump either of these two houses, just unjumpable in the middle, red flag on the one end, white flag on the other end, and then you go, the quick route is to that little skinny brush there. That's about 60 centimetres, 2 feet wide at the front, and 160 wide at the back with a 180 base spread. So not to be disregarded up that steep bank out of the water. Where you go here is completely up to you as to how you come to this. There is a route that comes down through there and jumps over that house and then turns very sharply back up to the other one. Or there's a route that takes slightly longer to jump over this house and back to that skinny brush. But I think this is probably the route that I'll take. What do you think, Francis? Where do you think you go?
I had just had a quick look at this, and I think there are the options of going on the inside, on that inside house, and then cutting tight back to the skinny there, or coming out a little bit further and making over this left-hand house and making the turn back to the skinny. I think the favourable option would be to come out to here.
Yeah.
But I wonder if somebody might try popping over that. It depends how brave you're feeling. I don't know if I'm going to be feeling brave enough to try that on a green horse. But I reckon in a situation without so much pressure, that option there could be on.
Yeah.
To go on that right hand.
There's another slow route at the far side, but how much difference do you think there is in distance between coming round and jumping over this fence and going there to jump that and round there?
I actually think that one for the right hand house, I think would be quicker from the house to the skinny.
Yeah.
But I think the time you have to set up for it will take more time. So I think if we looked on a time point of view, I reckon that swinging out, staying out, coming over this, then through the dew pond will be just as quick, if not quicker.
There's actually only 5 metres difference between coming to this house and coming to that house.
And that
for the amount of risk that's involved in that, I think the
bulk
bulk to me, and I always designed it with this being my primary route.
Yeah.
This is fence 22, the Townsfield Flyer fence. Big old ditch towards the end of the course. Fairly simple question, I always think, actually, but is a rider frightener.
We've stood down in the bottom of this ditch now, so that it gives a nice perspective for anybody that's going to be stood up here watching this later on. Really, as Eric says, this is a rider frightener. These sorts of fences actually jump very nicely.
Yeah.
And like some of the fences that we had earlier on, where we've got the ground line out further, they wouldn't be that much further out than where this rail is. It's purely the fact that there's a big ditch underneath it.
Yeah.
And for us, what's important is now galloping to the fence, keeping the contact, keeping the horse off our leg, and then riding up to the fence. And as you can see, the ground is rising up anyway, so we'll ride up to this, and then I think the horses will just have a nice soft jump over the top of it.
I mean, when we built this fence, we built this ground up to it, because if you're running uphill to a ditch, it makes it much easier. Your horses make a much better shape. It naturally engages them and gets a better jump over it. So that's actually, we've constructed this ground to be that shape to help them.
I think this should make some lovely pictures later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is fence 23, the Cotswold Life Stone Houses. 2 fences, 3 fences from home. Just a combination that just slows them down and makes them think a little bit, but not too difficult a combination. I think there's enough room. There's 4 or 5 different ways you can jump through these panels. You can jump straight over here and go left to right, or left to left, or right to left. But that, I think, is for the riders to decide where they actually want to go and what suits your horse's stride pattern. But I think, you know,
I think coming through this from the rider's point of view is that this is a question to bring you home.
Yeah.
It's a question to slow you up a little and make you think, so that we as riders can't ride recklessly towards the end of the course. There's still a question, it's still upright enough in front, it's still wide enough across the top, you've got a double there, but then like you said, with the distances and the way the other fence is angled, you've got so many variations to help get you through it. This is taking you home, but it's taking you home safely.
Exactly, it's just to slow them down a fraction really, and just to make the time a little bit more difficult, because you've got to slow down and jump it and respect it. I had it in the trees up there a couple of years ago, But to me though, when you came through those trees and crossed over the road, you naturally slowed down to do that anyway. So actually to put it out here, you're putting it in the middle of what is one of the faster stretches of the course. So that just takes another couple of seconds.
Yeah, and it's going to stop us driving home trying to make that time.
Yeah. This is fence 24, the Bates' saddle rack, which is this saddle rack on top of the hill here to the saddle carved over there, beautifully carved saddle by David Evans, the course builder here. To me, it's just slowing down exercise towards the end of the course. I want to make sure the horses are jumping. I want to, regardless of how quick they are time-wise, they need to respect this. It's quite upright, quite airy underneath it, up the little bank up and just a little pop and go. Yeah.
Oh, this is a nice question at the end again. You've got a succession of a few fences here to take us into the finish, and starting with a double of tables up there.
Yeah. Each
fence has been. Looks like it's been designed just to steady us up a little.
It has a little bit, just to control your pace towards the end of the course.
And here, you've got us riding up the slope. This is going to help to engage the horse, to focus the horse, to jump this nicely, to land in balance, so that we can travel down to the skinny there before we run on.
And as you can see, there's not much distance between that and then the very last fence down there, which is the Biffa Bin fence. Which will be the last fence they'll jump. So they're quite related between those three fences, really just to bring them home in a very controlled pattern.
And this is something that's very apparent, is that if you get to here and you're down on time...
No, exactly, and you're not going to make it up from here, I hope, that sort of thing.
And even there, you've got to gallop from the tables round to here, but you still got to set up. And we're running at 570 metres per minute. Well, between here to there, we're not going to get up above.
To me, if you're down at the dew pond, you've probably got to accept what you're down.
Yeah, and then it's just a case of minimising the amount of time faults
damage you do in that area. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay, this is fence 25, the last fence on the course, the Biffa Bin finale. Fairly straightforward parallel with a little roof made out of Biffa Bins. Really nice last fence, only probably 30-40 metres away from the fence before, so very much again controlling their pace. Francis?
This is a grand fence to have as a very last fence on the course, and I think for those of you that are watching, you'll be seeing the horses having to work and think as they come through the combination there before they then continue the roll down, jump over the last fence before heading off to the finish. You'll see the decoration around the course here, and in particularly around this fence. There it's got an example of one of the rocks that we have around the side. Safety is important in the design, something Eric can explain quickly.
Well, Jess, we don't use the real rocks on this. We've heard where the rocks that are addressing this fence are stage rocks, which are sort of plastic. The same with the walling that goes in the main arena. That's also plastic walling that comes up from stage companies, really, that we use, that make the fences look more permanent, but actually they're very light and easy and good for the horses if they run into them.
So that's the end of this cross-country course. We hope you've enjoyed walking it with us and enjoy the spectacle that you're about to see. Thank you very much.
Okay, have a good day.